Okay, we're just after 1 o'clock now, and there's still a few people joining us, but we'll kick off now. So welcome to the RTIG Inform webinar on presenting vehicle loading information to passengers. I'm Tim Rivet, I'm General Manager of RTIG, and I'll be hosting the event today. A few things to note. If you can keep your microphone muted unless you've been invited to talk. We are recording this session and it will be made available on our YouTube channel afterwards for you to review, and for those that can't join us live to watch. If you've got any questions, we have a chat function, so feel free to put them into that as we go along, and we'll pick questions up either during it if we can, or more generally use them as primer questions after the speakers have presented. So thank you for joining us. We had a session last week on passenger counting, focused really on how to measure and count passengers on a vehicle. There was a good turnout for that. We heard last week from TfL on the work that they were doing into researching different methods and how well they worked for counting passengers. And then 21st Century and R2P on their hardware solutions, followed up by Ticketer, who updated us on their new ticket machine based solution that they just launched. If you weren't able to join us last week, then you can catch up on that on our YouTube channel. Following on from last week, this week's session is really about how to use the data that you've collected on passenger numbers and loading, and how you can then present it to customers and use that data to help manage services. And it's really sort of key time for this sort of discussion, because how we make customers feel safe, or at least better about using public transport following the COVID pandemic, and the messages that everybody's been getting about avoid public transport, how we overcome those is going to be critical to the ability for the industry to recover. This morning, interestingly, Transport Focus published a report on how our transport users feeling about returning to travel. I've only had time for a skim read so far, but it's well worth a read, and it does pick out some of the concerns that we'll pick up today about crowdedness and the ability to social distance on public transport. So this afternoon we're just doing introductions at the moment. We'll hear from Passenger on their app and services, then CitySwift, who started at the beginning of this week to get quite a lot of interest in the trade press on their new offer. Swiftly, taking a bit of a wider view around what's going on elsewhere outside of the UK, and then I'll finish off with a bit of a world trip, how other places like China and Australia are presenting data, and then we'll open up for questions. So there's a number of you that are new to RTIG, haven't been involved with us before, so I thought it was worth picking up on who we are. So we're a trade industry body for public transport technology stakeholders. We've got a membership made up of everybody from local authorities through suppliers and bus operators, stretching the whole range of sizes and areas across the UK and a few continental and international members, and we do things like this to help share knowledge and provide training. Normally these would be face to face, but we can't do that, so we're having these webinars. We develop technical documents and standards, and we work with governments to help them understand what's possible, and to make sure that policies are implementable, and we work through European standards bodies such as CEN and wider ISO in the development of standards and supporting technology development generally in the industry. So that's RTIG. To start with today, I'd like to introduce Sarah from Passenger, who's going to be our first speaker today. So Sarah, over to you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Tim. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to make sure you can see my screen. I'll just share that.
Yeah, that's good.
Great. So thank you very much for your time today. My name is Sarah Bott, and I am the Business Development Director at Passenger Technology Group. It goes without saying that the last few months have been an incredibly challenging time for all of us that work in public transport. It's shown us that behavioural change can happen quickly, and we all know that we've had to adapt very quickly our business to support our customers. From our perspective, that's the operators that we work with, and it's also the members of the public that use our apps and our websites. Ultimately, in a post-COVID world, we all want people to continue to use public transport instead of jumping back into their car because that's where they feel safe. It's better for the environment and it's better for congestion on our roads. So to bring back confidence to public transport, passengers need to feel safe, they need to feel informed, and they need access to real-time information so that they feel in control of their journey planning needs. For those of you who aren't familiar with Passenger, we develop digital solutions such as mobile ticketing and journey planning for bus operators and local authorities. We now partner with over 20 operators across the UK, right across from Cardiff, through the south coast to Brighton, right up to Scotland. To give you a little bit of background into our presentation today, back in January 2018, we developed a new feature into our apps and our websites called Live Buses. And this is otherwise known as automatic vehicle location. This feature shows the positions of buses in real time, and it's been hugely popular with both passengers and operators alike, because it provides certainty of when the bus will arrive. To do this, we take the Siri VM feed from the ETM machine and we feed that straight into our apps and our websites. And this is just a schematic diagram to show you. We take the Siri VM, we feed it into an API, and then we feed that out into the passenger apps and websites. So all of our technology is developed with the end user in mind. Operators are often telling us that our back-end system, called Passenger Cloud, is very intuitive and very easy to use. And luckily in the App Store as well, we get great feedback. We're often rated 5 stars from the public as well in the App Store. And we get this great feedback because we're constantly evolving and developing our product by asking ourselves, how can we improve their customer experience? And particularly during this crisis, we've been asking ourselves, how can we provide more certainty to bus users in this really uncertain time? So by communicating better information about the bus that's on its way through our live bus feed, we can make journeys more accessible and we can help to reduce new user anxiety, which is really important. So in recent weeks, we've been really excited to roll out a new feature called Enhanced Vehicle Information. And this feature provides important data such as payment options and COVID-19 guidance. And because we believe this feature is really important, we're not only now just feeding that into our own apps and websites, we're also going to offer it as an API to operators that have their own apps and websites. The type of information that we're sharing is whether the bus is a single deck or a double deck, obviously very important when it comes to capacity planning. What payment methods are accepted on that bus? So is the bus taking contactless, or should I buy a ticket through the mobile app because I can't pay by cash? What accessibility features are on board? And also additional features that buses now have, whether there's USB charging, my phone's about to die, it's great that I can jump on a bus and charge my phone, right down to whether there's additional room that I can get my double buggy on board. So all of these features, we really provide additional information to passengers to make them feel more confident in the bus that's arriving for them. This is an example of how this looks with one of our local operators in Bournemouth, Moorbus, part of the Go Ahead group. So you can see here, you've got the registration plate, the capacity on the bus has got 79 seats as it stands before COVID, and all the additional features that are available. So all of our software is run through our system Passenger Cloud, and this is what the operators use to upload their trans-exchange data. In this feature, we can now add some additional vehicle information. So we can take the number plate, you can see the fleet number, and you can provide any additional data that then gets fed out into our apps and onto the websites of that particular operator. So what else have we been considering to help passengers return to buses with confidence? So many operators are working really hard right now to keep their fleets clean, and we think it's really important that passengers know about that. We want to communicate social distancing measures, and we want to encourage passengers to help each other to make people feel safe. We can also provide additional information by being helpful. For example, in Cardiff and down here in Bournemouth, we now integrate with bike share schemes. So if you know that the bus coming towards you is busy and it's full, there's alternative modes of transport that are available if you're able. We can also show how long it would take to walk that distance if you can't take the bus that you want to. All of this helps to reduce returning user anxiety. But most importantly, how are we communicating real-time occupancy information? Our software has the ability to pull live data from a variety of sources. We take our own data and we can combine that with third-party suppliers. So we work with people right across the industry and combine that data to really provide useful information for bus passengers. One of the very first features we rolled out was a crowdsourcing feature. We've rolled this out now onto the web. We haven't rolled it out onto apps yet. That will be happening in the next week or two. But we want to tap into the power of the crowd. We want to encourage a behavioural shift across the industry and ask people to report if their bus is quiet, if it's moderate, or if it's busy. Because it's really imperative that people stay alert to social distancing measures to avoid complacency. We also believe that this shift can help other people with their journey planning, and actually people do like to have their say. Psychologically, when you help other people, it makes you feel good, so you do it again. So what we want to do is kind of really roll this out across the industry so it becomes the norm. It creates a new behaviour, and it becomes almost a civic duty to inform other passengers of what the bus capacity is. This also helps to fill a data gap. It's been fantastic to be able to work with Ticketer in producing their crowd counting feature into our apps. But we also need to fill a gap, because if there's 3 people on a bus, for example, if those 3 people are sat right at the back of the bus and they're a family and they're together, it doesn't tell us if the bus has got any social distancing space if those 3 people are separate. So it really provides the gap in that knowledge, therefore providing a kind of more valuable data feed into apps and websites. This is an example just to show you. We take the Siri VM feed, the vehicle asset data, we can combine with third-party data sources, and last week we listened to Ticketer, R2P and 21st Century. We can combine with a wide variety of suppliers across the industry, and also combine that with our passenger crowdsourcing feature. And this is an example of how it will look in the apps. So you can see here we've got some social distancing data in there that you can click through and read how to stay safe on public transport. You can improve the information on the capacity of the bus, whether it's quiet, moderate, or busy. You could see when the bus was last cleaned, and operators can update that daily or even more so. And then you've also got the additional vehicle asset information that I mentioned earlier. One area that we are rolling out in the next couple of weeks is also bus stop data, because this is an important part of a journey for a bus passenger. You would like to know when you're going down to your bus stop whether there's a lot of people down there for social distancing perspective. So we'll be applying the same logic through crowdsourcing into our bus stop data. And this is how it will look in the apps. What we will do is err on the side of caution when there isn't any data available, so that people know that they can improve the information, or when they get there, they know that people didn't know what was the feedback. So just to share with you some recent deployments, we're incredibly grateful for all the feedback and insight that we've been receiving from our operators that we work with, and we really want to thank them for all their insights. We've integrated now with Ticketer, and we've rolled that out with our crowdsourcing feature onto our websites. And this is just to show you, because every operator is different and they work with different third-party suppliers, how we can configure that within the apps and websites. So, for example, for Transdev, they work with Ticketer, and they've got it from 2 Ticketer portals. We can feed that through and combine that with passenger crowdsourcing. When we launched this, I think it was last week, they got a lot of great feedback. So it's nice to see that the industry are approving of combining these 2 data sources. When we work with Nottingham, there at the moment they've launched our crowdsourcing feature, and they've called it a capacity checker. They've rolled this out this week. Blackpool Transport work with Parkion and Travelog, so we can combine those sources. And the same for any of the Go Ahead group. They've literally just launched this week CitySwift, so potentially we could also combine that into our websites and apps as well. Everything we want to do by combining these feeds is really to build as much confidence as possible for the industry. So thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me or go to our website at discoverpassenger.com. And thank you very much to Tim and to RTIG. We really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. That's a fascinating look at what you can do and where it's being rolled out. So to pick up on one of the last things from Sarah's slide, they're working with CitySwift on crowdedness data and presenting that. Next up, we've got Alan Farrelly from CitySwift, who is going to tell us what they're up to and what they can do.
Yeah, thanks a million, Tim, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. This is my first event with RTIG, but it's great to see so many people on board, and I really enjoyed Sarah's demo. We know Tom and the team at Passenger really well, and they provide great services across the UK. And I think as Sarah finished up there, I think in the current environment, it's very important that suppliers work together, and we're very open to doing that with Passenger, and it's all about getting our industry back up on its feet. It's the key thing, because we'll all win in the long term. So what I've done today is I've kind of got a demo of the CitySwift platform, and I've got a breakdown of the different modules we have, focusing, of course, on capacity planning for passengers and how we display it to them. But also I have a little bit of a breakdown of the company and the story, because I'm sure a lot of you have not heard of us before, but I'd like to take the opportunity to let you get to know us. And then I'm obviously free for questions at the end. So with that, I might just kick off. So CitySwift is a data platform, but really we see ourselves as a specialist data engine to power modern bus networks. So just a bit of background on the company, and maybe myself to start. I kind of, my own background is actually bus. So 35 years ago, my parents bought one bus 35 years later, my back garden at home became a bus depot. So I literally grew up with the industry, drove buses, cleaned buses, fixed them. Didn't like fixing them very cold in garages, as I'm sure some people know. So I really kind of grew up with the industry, and it's kind of in my blood as such. I think I was lucky enough that one of my best friends in school was a guy called Brian, who was always the smartest guy in school, but he ultimately ended up working for Citibank as an analyst, and really was working with a lot of clever data science stuff, and we kind of came together and decided we'd try and provide cutting edge data science to the bus industry and see where it took us. So where we are today is we're a team of 20 people based on the west coast of Ireland. It's a city called Galway. We're growing rapidly. We expect to be up to 40 people by year end, but that's mainly made up of computer scientists, data scientists, the very important mathematicians, and also even more important, people who actually understand the bus industry. So we've actually got our board, some people you might recognize. So our lead investor is the founder of Ryanair, Declan Ryan. We have Bob Montgomery, who is the former MD of Stagecoach UK Bus, and Mike McGearty is our chairman, who is the CEO of CarTrawler, the leading provider of ancillary revenue to the airline industry. Clients, I suppose, this week, and it's probably the reason I'm on this call, we were very proud to announce multiple national rollouts with groups. So we were able to announce a national rollout with Go Ahead Group for what I'm about to display, their When to Travel solution. We're also able to roll out National Express nationwide as well. And I think we're expecting to do a couple more announcements this week and next week also. So moving quite fast. We're also, I suppose, operational in mainland Europe and other markets too. So just a bit about the engine underneath. So data platform, we have our engine that is our secret sauce, is really our machine learning and artificial intelligence and our knowledge of how we can apply that in a very specific domain. And we have multiple modules that come off that. We have Swift Metrics, Swift Schedule, and also, I suppose, this When to Travel element, that's a passenger-facing thing that I'll give you the backstory. Wasn't exactly our intention with the clever algorithms we came up with, but in the COVID crisis, I suppose it led us to that discovery. So how it works, much like how Sarah described, we integrate with all systems. We'd love to integrate with passenger too. Very open-minded on that. So we integrate obviously with AVL, ticketing providers, scheduling. So that's all different scheduling file types, including all those in mainland Europe and around the world. Telematics, driver behavior data, and lots of sources. But I suppose what we do is we mix it with big data. So everything that could affect bus networks or passenger demand, we pull, and that's all kind of on CitySwift's end. So it's everything from traffic and weather and all the other clever bits that we use with our AI team. And then we push it into Swift Engine, Swift Metrics, Swift Schedule, and what I'm about to show you, which is the passenger-facing element. So as I mentioned earlier on, Go Ahead, I suppose, we're proud to announce a national deployment with them. They've called it When to Travel. But what I have is I have actually a live demo of that. I think I'll just go onto their website and use it from there, which is probably the easiest thing to do. And I'm happy to share the link with everybody if they'd like to use it after this call. So I think there was multiple reasons why Go Ahead wanted to use this. I think the main reason was obviously confidence. I think Sarah touched on that. We need to restore confidence in our industry, and we need to restore confidence in using the bus, so people's travel patterns and habits are not formed around other forms of transport. It's vital for a number of reasons, as we all know. Literally, we are not going to have enough space on our roads for everyone to drive to and from work or everyone to and from activity centres. So it's vital that we do that. But also, from a planning point of view, I think, bus services will become extremely peaky. With people just travelling at morning and evenings and spreading the load and getting human behaviour to essentially spread out loads. So with that, I might just jump on here and just share us using the platform itself. So this is, you can link this, I'll share this link, but When to Travel.co.uk. So basically what you do as a step is, this is a landing page that we have, but you merely go in here, you search for your route. So let's just go with route 2, what direction you're going to and from, your departure date. So why not, let's go for some time next week. So we do about 2 weeks in advance, and we'll hit search. And I suppose the really clever thing that we've done here is, and it was kind of the really important discovery, was we figured out origin destination, and we managed to work out live load factors on board buses, which for us was the holy grail, and it's taken years of work with our data science team. And our provisional plan originally was to use this to replan networks. But once groups started to notice what they could do, they thought it had a use case for the current COVID crisis. So we can see here every single trip, we can see how busy it's going to be, but more importantly, how loaded the bus will be at different points in the network. So obviously, which is not unexpected, we have quite a peak there at 7:26. We have obviously a peak here in certain stops, etc. But all of that is customizable to depending on what you perceive to be busy or what you perceive to be quiet. So I think we will see more and more as maybe we go from 2 meters to 1 meter, that these are all changeable, but that's all doable by the operator on their side. So I think just back to here, I think it's one thing being able to present to passengers that buses are going to be busy, but it's also important that you need to be able to change it in behind. So we're lucky enough, we've a solution called Swift Schedule that essentially gives operators the ability to reschedule buses to ensure that there is no reds. It's all automatic, and it's been rolled out by multiple groups, and the ROI levels are very, very high. So we've done a lot of work with National Express on it, and we've seen very significant reduction in vehicle hours, significant increases in reliability, and the ability is supposed to manage social distancing through it also. I think the third element in our platform is Swift Metrics, which really allows operators to take a network-wide view of all the KPIs and all the information they need, and to share that with multiple stakeholders, because in the current environment, there's stakeholders, councils, we have the Department for Transport, we have health officials, we have multiple stakeholders, and we need to be able to present information quickly and an easy to read format. So I think just the important thing for us as well is naturally speed. So we have a rapid implementation process. So I think we'll have fully deployed across all the go-ahead group by Monday, which means lots of late nights for everyone. But from a standing start, I think that's a really good achievement and a sign of how fast we can move as a company. So that's the CitySwift platform. And just any questions, it'd be great to share. Everyone love getting feedback. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan, for that. It's good to find out what you're able to do and how rapidly you're able to roll that out. Next up, we have Joaquin from Swiftly, who joins us from the place that many of us would be hoping to go at the moment. He's all the way down in the Canary Islands at the moment. So we're unable to travel, but he's able to join us, and he's going to talk to us about what they can do and the work they do in around the world on vehicle loading.
Thank you so much for the kind intro, Tim, and thank you for creating this space, and thanks for RTIG. I think it's really important to collaborate as an industry given the current challenging times. First of all, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Joaquin Pena. I should be based in Madrid, as Tim was mentioning, but I'm currently in the islands. I'm a business development manager at Swiftly. I've been involved in the transport industry since a while now. And the agenda for today, for you to have clarity where you're gonna see, I'm gonna drop some quick words about Swiftly, what Swiftly is. Then I will talk about challenges about vehicle occupancy data, quickly phrase how does this work for Swiftly. So what are the inputs we need and what are the outputs we provide? And finally, give you examples of how we're providing this information both to agencies, and by agencies I refer to both authorities and operators, and also how we help to push this information to passengers. So quick words, what is Swiftly? Basically, since our start, we are very worried in understanding where vehicles supposed to be and where vehicles actually are. And we compare this and provide 3 product lines. The first one is real-time passenger predictions for passengers to be accurately informed of where their bus is going to arrive. second one is to provide authorities and operators real-time operations tool to adjust service in real time. And the third one is to leverage big data and also using machine learning and artificial intelligence into generate insights from historical data. So those are our three competencies. We do all this as a cloud-based software, and we operate as a software as a service. So basically, as Tim was mentioning, our headquarters is in San Francisco. We are founded back in 2014. We have grown to work in over 70 public transport agencies right now in Europe, Australia, and the US. And I think this is really important for context right now. We have been hit really hard as an industry from multiple levels. We never have seen this before. We saw ridership plummeted. But I think what's pertinent for context for today's webinar is that safety and security has shifted from being immensely important to be actually critical from a health standpoint. So definitely this is a new variable that we need to address. So what has been Swiftly approach? Actually, Swiftly approach from the start is to provide nimble and flexible solutions both to authorities and operators in order to improve the reliability of the network. But this has been utmostly accelerated during this given time. I would like to piggyback of what Tim mentioned at the beginning, and also what Sarah mentioned in her presentation, that we need to regain the trust of the passengers. And this is really important to ensure public transport is highly seen. So basically, at Swiftly, we always help agencies to monitor operations, to track bunching and gapping, but now this is really important to provide lower crowding levels. Also measure driver performance. And in this critical time, it's really used by several agencies just to boost driver morale as well and to provide coaching. Also to swiftly adjust timetables, and basically, and what's most pertinent regarding vehicle occupancy data, to provide the necessary tools for customer service to give answers to passengers. So where are their vehicles right now, and what is the crowding levels? But also, I think we need to put, and I agree with all the presenters before, we need to put this information in passengers' hands. And the way we can do this is put it through third parties, so through apps, personal apps that any authority operator have, or also third-party apps, but also in signatures and also in the own dashboards that the operations have. So what are the current challenges of vehicle occupancy? I think this is really important, and perhaps it wasn't mentioned that before, but this is one of the sides of the industry that has been lagging behind in terms of standardization. And here, one of the first challenges is that actually vehicle occupancy is not vehicle occupancy. And what we mean by this is that there are different type of data, different type of processing this data, and different formats, as we have seen in the previous series of the webinar, if you could attend. There are several passenger counting devices of way of getting this information. But as well, the second challenge we have is that this coverage is actually limited. Not all the fleet may have this possibility of collect these devices, or perhaps an authority have different operators reporting this type of information with different devices. So this is a big challenge. And the third one is that data is not openly available. So of course, we understand the sensibility of perhaps some operations not willing to share, as was discussed in the previous webinar, the actual load information of the buses, but definitely there are ways of showing like the percentage occupancy or showing those type of levels. And finally, the three hurdles I have mentioned before are really triggered where this necessity have shifted from nice to have to urgent. We all agree on this. And specifically in Swiftly, we are furious advocates of standardization, like from over a decade. Actually, one of our founders was one of the founders of real-time feed, actually, our own Mike Smith. And we have taken this problem really serious. So in a one way, we are really excited that the industry is putting focus on this, because we can really continue working in this standardization and ways to push this information. So how does the real-time vehicle occupancy information works? And I think here it's really important to speak about real-time, because as COVID-19 has proven us, ridership and passenger information is shifting week to week. We really cannot rely strictly on historical data. So how do we do at Swiftly to communicate this real-time occupancy information? So basically, we are able to recover and collect the different sources of information that comes from different passenger counting devices, from different types of sources, and also different type of data as we were mentioning, such as the total count, or perhaps the percentage occupancy, or perhaps the qualitative data, just saying it's empty, it's full, or half empty. And we're able to centralize this information, and with our strong suite of APIs, as I mentioned before, we really are advocates of open data. We share this information, for example, to mobile apps, that it can be Google Maps, that it can be, for example, apps like Transit, and also own apps that own operators and authorities have. We can also embed real-time apps, any responsive web, for passengers directly to access it. Also push it to electronic signage and signals to a stop, so that passengers actually at the stop can really check as well if they should board the bus or not. And finally, and a differentiator here is that we can push in a dashboard for operations in authorities and also operators to take informed decisions about when to shorten a vehicle or not. So here I wanted to show an example of the Swiftly dashboard. This dashboard is used over 4,000 users currently to monitor on-time performance, to monitor punctuality, bunching, and gapping. But we just added the possibility, and we're working with several agencies in crowding information. And this gives the possibility to agencies not only being reactive, but proactive in managing changes and seeing when to shorten our vehicles and when to take certain decisions based on actual real-time crowding levels. This is another example of how we push these informations in the hands of passengers. As we mentioned before, it was of utmost importance. And it's including an embedded live map that actually, as well as the live dashboard before, as we are entirely cloud-based, actually dispatchers can access it in their own tablet, in their own mobile phone, and the same it's for passengers. You can actually take a deep look on what's the crowding information of the different vehicles. Here's an example of Transit. That is a third-party app that we already did several partnerships together, that we can push through our APIs this information to them. And this is how they are displaying actually right now in several cities. Perhaps Tim is going to explain later how it's shown in Australia as well. And the good thing about providing an integral solution from the start to the end is that you deploy a speed to value solution. You can transform it in different formats depending on what are the actual need of authorities and operators. And finally, that you are starting to build a future-proof solution, as I agree with the presenters before. This is not just to solve a particular COVID-19 issue, but this has come here to stay. So finally, to wrap up, what's next? I think this is the big question. I really wanted to make a call to action. I think these are 3 tactical questions that each authority and operator should be asking right now. So first, do you collect vehicle occupancy data, and in whatever means you are? Then what data you want to actually display? Do you want to actually display the numbers, or you want to explain the percentage or different type of data? And finally, where do you want to display this information to? And I think you're in a good starting position if you're already thinking about this different type of questions. At Swiftly, we are more than happy to help you in this process. As I mentioned before, we are one of the greatest advocates of real-time information and how to push this both to agencies and passengers. And if you didn't start to ask these questions right now, we're also really happy to join you in this process. I think we definitely could find collaborations in here. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I think I just nailed exact 10 minutes, Tim. I'm really happy to help all the audience that is really worried about the subject and how to better collaborate this type of partnerships on the industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Waheen, for that view on what you can do, and really importantly the questions that people need to be asking, because it is a lot more than just collecting the data. You need to really think through how you're going to present it to the customer to meet their needs and expectations. And to round off today, I'd like to pick up on that as part of a bit of a world trip. So we've seen what Passenger are doing in the UK and CitySwift are doing, and Swiftly, particularly in some of their states examples. But there's a lot of people doing this in slightly different ways around the world. And so if I can get the technology to work, There we go. So in Sweden, Skånetrafiken are presenting data on their map and in their apps. You might have seen stuff in the press, trade press, about this, using coloured dots. Like many people, they're in the fortunate position of having hardware counters on bus as part of the franchise operations, and enough spare vehicles at the moment from their adapted routes to be able to add capacity in when buses are getting full. Whereas at the other side of the world, in the Northern Hemisphere, in Victoria, in Canada, for the bus nuts, if you want to know what your bus looks like that you're going to get, they're providing a little picture with color-coded buses rather than people, which is maybe some problems in Singapore. We've got somebody on from Singapore, and there's been a bit of a chat going on about vehicle numbers and registration numbers and the problems of bus nuts. But if you really are a bus nut, then actually you want to be in Sydney, Australia, where actually you can find out what type of bus it is. So you can see not only how full it is, you can also see that there's a Scania out there and there's a Volvo BLE out there running around, and so certainly one for the bus nuts. Like previous speakers, number of people is indicated by shading passengers, but in their TripGo app, then they're using textual and color coding with indication of standing room or many seats available. Sydney's probably the one example that I've come across that it's quite widespread, this information, and a common approach to providing the data, because they're making this data available to all of their different app providers and the likes of Google through an open API, rather than relying on particular apps. They're making it available to everybody, and Transit, whom Joaquin mentioned briefly, their app is available down there, and they're using 4 different things. The bus is empty, standing room only, and few seats available. Unfortunately, I couldn't capture the standing room only or full because I was asleep, given the time differences down there. But just shows the different approaches of presenting the information. Just next door, in Auckland, they're using a very similar approach. They're making it available openly to people, and they're though using 5 different levels, all the way up to, quite interestingly, I think the one, actually this bus is so full it's probably not going to accept passengers, and that's something that as people start to travel more, I think is going to become more of an interesting challenge. How do we deal with leaving passengers behind because the bus is too full? In China, in Shenzhen, where they've been recovering for a bit longer than most of the world, their vehicles are still maintaining 50% load, and they're managing that by live video feeds back to their control center, and holding passengers back, and adding vehicles in. and that's something that they're doing in a few places in Canada. They'll start a route. When it gets full, they'll not let anybody on, and it just becomes a drop-off service, and they then dispatch a new vehicle to run that route from the point that the previous vehicle was full. Over in Shenzhen, they've actually got QR codes on all the buses and in taxis, in the boarding doors, and you are supposed to scan the codes to register. That provides them with pretty accurate loading and boarding data, and it also links to their equivalent of track and trace, and the compliance, I was reading, is really quite high with that. So that might be an interesting approach over here. And then one of the interesting things for me is actually how do passengers behave with this information, with loading, and if they know what the vehicle's doing and whether it's going to be full. At the moment, I suppose unsurprisingly, there's very little information available, given that it's early days. There are a number of universities doing research in Europe that I'm aware of into behaviour, because we know that people in the UK, when they're busy, they'll find another route or change modes, which is maybe something that we don't want to be promoting too greatly. But sometimes people actually take it into their own hands, and in Australia, when they started going back to school and had loading constraints on school vehicles, and they were finding kids couldn't get onto the buses because they were too full, parents organised their own arrangements where they would take over a car park, and you could drive part way to school within walking distance, and then they organised socially distanced walking trains for the kids to get to school, and that's now been picked up as a authority organised service now. But people do have some very good ideas and show willingness to implement them and do some innovative things themselves. So it is worth remembering to talk to customers and passengers to see what their ideas are. So that was a brief run around what other people are doing around the world. We're now going to open up for questions and that people may have. We've had some on the chat. I think the first one to pick up from that goes back to Sarah's presentation about crowdsourcing and the reliability and accuracy of it. I don't know whether anybody from Passengers got any knowledge to share on that.
Hi there, Dave from Passenger here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. So I've answered a little bit in the chat, but just to expand on that, we're very keen to sort of focus on the reliability of this data, both the crowdsourced data and data from the automated counting systems and from the driver systems that have been installed in the ETMs. What we've been doing is combining and analyzing the data from multiple sources where we have more than one source, so we can start to analyze that and work out which is the most accurate, and where there are gaps. We've had some operators that are less keen on using the crowdsourced data, which is fine. So we're kind of using that as more of a fallback where the driver or where other sources aren't available. We've also had some operators that haven't wanted to enforce drivers to count passengers as well as an extra task for them whilst they're already doing a lot of things getting passengers on board the buses. So some of them are sort of treating this information more reliably or less reliably, depending on the source that it comes from. It's also quite early days on some of this, and we're sort of adapting to improve the reliability and look for trends and work out how we can sort of smooth over any gaps.
Yeah. Okay. Has anybody else got any experience of crowdsourcing, particularly passenger type data, and any things to watch about?
This is Daniel from Zipabout here. I don't know if you can hear me, but I put some comments into the chat, which I could just clarify maybe a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm from a company called Zipabout. You may have come across the name. We're actually doing some work with the DFT at the moment in the rail sector around exactly this kind of thing. So as a business, we're very focused on understanding passenger intent rather than the sort of the focus today has been around sensor data and sort of understanding how many people are on the bus now. My background's actually online advertising technology, which is a bit random, I know, but what we do is we actually understand, and we have some patents pending around this, but our technology understands passengers' intent through their interaction with information about services. And it's quite established in the rail sector. And interesting listening today, we've been through a lot of this pain. We effectively crowdsource data at massive scale. But I think I've touched on in the comments, one of the real challenges with crowdsourcing is privacy and GDPR consent models. Yeah. Without going into too much detail about that here, but I'd be happy to speak to anybody who's interested directly about how we're doing this in the rail sector, because it is directly applicable here to bus. Interestingly, today I'm fairly new to the bus sector. As I say, we focused on rail, but the amount of operational data that's available that tells you how many people are actually on buses at the moment is much better than the rail sector. It's very difficult to get data about how many people are on a train because it's not really counted particularly well in the rail sector. And we're actually doing some really interesting work around calibrating the intent data that we collect with operational data. So I would be very interested in speaking to some of the people that have been presenting today to see how we could maybe connect up our different approaches. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's interesting what you say, that that seems to be more information about loading available in bus. The reason for having last week's and this week is that people are going, we don't know anything, and there's things to learn from the rail industry where they know much more.
I don't know, it goes both directions, trust me, from what I'm saying. I mean, there's definitely some conversations to be had. There's some knowledge transfer that could be done here, and I'd be keen to speak to anybody who thinks there would be a conversation worth having.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, just very quickly, one very quick point is that there was a couple of questions there about the siloing of crowdsourcing data. Crowdsourcing does not work unless it's done at massive scale. That's fact. I mean, I think somebody referenced the Catapult have looked at this. Crowdsourcing will not work on a single operator level. It has to be distributed across the entire network, and that's challenging. That's something we're solving in the rail sector at the moment, and is something that could be solved here, but it's complicated.
Yeah, I think there's different ways of doing it. Some of the passenger approach, where actually it's somebody on the bus, perhaps is more interesting and reliable than using just mobile phone movements and things like that, which TfL tried to do, and have something to say about that last week. And yeah, definitely we're finding that sort of crowdsourcing, yeah, you need very big scale, and the accuracy's got something to be desired. We will be picking up some of a couple of comments about getting in contact with each other when I send out the link to the recording and the slides. We will be sharing links to the to Passenger, CitySwift and Swiftly in that. I know that the Department of Transport are very interested in how they bring some of this data together, and a bit of a shameless plug was going to happen anyway, but it works. We've, as RTIG, have recently issued a technical document on how to share vehicle occupancy data between systems using Siri and GTFS RT. And so hopefully that might make life easier for some people. So I think most people's questions have been answered, and we are only a couple of minutes before 2 when we said we'd end. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to Sarah, Alan and Joaquin for presenting, and everybody for participating and getting involved and asking questions. I hope you've enjoyed it. As I said, the recording will be available on YouTube, and I'll circulate links round to everybody. Our next event will be in a couple of weeks' time. We're just pinning the dates down at the moment, but it's going to be on data management for post-COVID service restoration. One of the big challenges is as services start to build back up, how do you manage the data for the timetables and real-time systems quickly enough to make sure that customers really know what's going on? How can we learn from the shuts down? So you'll get an email once we've pinned down the date for that. And if you want to find more about RTIG, perhaps join or find out more about the publications that we do, and look at the previous webinars that we've had, then visit rtig.org.uk. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you soon in one form or another. Thank you all. Thank you for watching this RTIG webinar. To find out more about RTIG and our work, then please visit our website at rtig.org.uk. Thank you.